Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic in Japanese history, the Azuchi Momoyama period. This was a super interesting time from around 1568 or 573 to 1600 when Japan finally got unified after ages of chaos and fighting among tons of rival warlords. So, let's talk about the key players. First up is Oda Nobunaga, who was in charge from 1568 to 1582. He basically made himself the top military leader of Japan and built this awesome castle at Azuchi, near Kyoto. That's where the first part of this period's name comes from. After Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi took over from 1582 to 1598. He kept pushing to unify Japan and set up his base at Momoyama, south of Kyoto, giving us the second part of the period's name. Unfortunately, Hideyoshi's invasions of Korea didn't go so well, leading to a bit of a mess that ended this period. But it set the stage for Tokugawa Ieyasu to come in and start the Tokugawa shogunate in 1603. Now, let's rewind a bit to the Muromachi period, which was from 1333 to 1573. This was a pretty turbulent time. The Ashikaga shoguns were struggling to keep control, and things got really bad during the Onin War from 1467 to 1477. This civil war pretty much destroyed Heian-kyo and left Japan in chaos with warlords fighting each other for about a century. But then came Oda Nobunaga, the guy who changed everything. Starting from Nagoya Castle in central Japan, he expanded his territory in the 1550s and 60s through battles, sieges, and smart diplomacy. In 1568, he took over Heian-kyo, and in 1573, he exiled the last Ashikaga shogun, marking the start of the Azuchi Momoyama period. So, let's dive deeper into the story of Oda Nobunaga. By 1579, Nobunaga was in control of all central Japan. He set up his new headquarters at the impressive Azuchi Castle on the edge of Lake Biwa, which is why this period gets its name. Sadly, the castle is mostly gone today, except for its stone base. But back then, it was groundbreaking. It combined luxury with defensive features and had a huge multi-story keep, setting the trend for future Japanese castles. Although it was burned down in 1582, it was later rebuilt. Nobunaga was a force to be reckoned with. He maintained his dominance over rival warlords and kept expanding his territory thanks to his large, well-equipped army. One of his standout generals was Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who would eventually succeed him. Nobunaga was one of the first Japanese leaders to embrace firearms, with an army that included 3,000 musketeers. They fired in rotating ranks, creating a continuous and deadly volley of fire. He also equipped his entire army, including the infantry, with full suits of armor. He was strategic with the territories he conquered, distributing them among his loyal commanders and frequently relocating captured warlords to break old alliances. To weaken his rivals, he abolished road tolls, cutting their income. Nobunaga also boosted his own funds by minting Japan's first currency since 958 and standardizing exchange rates. He found another income source by releasing merchants from their guilds in exchange for a state fee. In 1571, he began an extensive land survey to improve the tax system and, from 1576 onwards, carried out sword hunts to confiscate weapons from peasants, a policy his successors would continue. Nobunaga's ambition wasn't just bad news for rival warlords. Buddhist temples also felt his wrath. These temples were rich and powerful, often having their own armies. The most notorious example of his crackdown was the destruction of the Enryakuji monastic complex on Mount Hiei near Kyoto in 1571, where 25,000 people were killed. On the flip side, Nobunaga supported Christian missionaries, seeing value in European trade and technology, like the firearms he used so effectively. This period also saw a shift in Japanese art, moving towards more secular themes and bolder, flashier styles. Birds, flowers, and everyday scenes became popular subjects. But Nobunaga's story took a dramatic turn on June 21, 1582. He was betrayed by his ally Akechi Mitsuhide in an event known as the Honnoji Incident. Mitsuhide attacked Nobunaga, and when capture seemed inevitable, Nobunaga committed suicide or, in another version of the story, died in the flames as the temple burned. His son and heir, Nobutada, also died in the attack. So, after Nobunaga's dramatic death, his trusted general, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, quickly avenged him by defeating Mitsuhide at the Battle of Yamazaki. Declaring himself Nobunaga's successor, Hideyoshi ruled Japan from 1582 to 1598. He set up his base at Momoyama Castle in Fushimi, south of Heian-kyo, which gives the period the second half of its name. During this time, castles were more about showing off power than actual defense, though they did have features like wide moats and thick stone walls with windows for musketeers. A great example is the famous Himeji Castle, which, like many others, was never attacked. These castles also spurred the growth of surrounding towns, some of which became major cities like Edo and Osaka. Hideyoshi commanded a huge force of about 200,000 men. He used a mix of military campaigns and diplomacy to establish control over most of Japan by 100. Between 1585 and 1590, he launched successful campaigns in western Japan, Kyushu, and Shikoku. To gain legitimacy, Hideyoshi sought favor from the emperor, funding court ceremonies and rebuilding the imperial palace. He even took the title of Taiko, or retired regent. Hideyoshi is known for several policies and reforms. To fund the state, he taxed peasants and commercial activities in big cities. In 1591, he introduced a rigid class system known as the Shinoko-sho system, which classified people as warriors, farmers, artisans, or merchants, based on their production value. Movement between these classes was prohibited, meaning only those born into a samurai family could become samurai. This change meant samurai could no longer be part-time farmers and had to rely entirely on their lords for their livelihood. In 1587, Hideyoshi passed an edict to expel all Christian missionaries, but it wasn't strictly enforced. Concerned about Jesuits encouraging persecution of Buddhists and Shinto believers, and Portuguese traders selling Japanese as slaves, he issued another edict in 1597. This time, he meant business, leading to the brutal crucifixion of 26 Christians in Nagasaki. Despite this harsh start, the campaign against Christianity faded, as Hideyoshi didn't want to disrupt the lucrative silk for silver trade with Portuguese-controlled Macau. Hideyoshi also tackled the issue of Wako pirates, who troubled East Asian seas. He co-opted them, allowing pirate ships to trade legally if they carried his personal Red Seal, hence the name Shuen-sen, or Red Seal ships. With a firm grip on Japan, Hideyoshi turned his attention abroad. Between 1592 and 1598, he launched 2 invasions of Korea in what's known as the Imjin Wars. His plan was to eventually invade China, which was then under the Ming dynasty. Some even say this ambitious plan showed that Hideyoshi might have been a bit unhinged. Regardless of his motives, Hideyoshi's exceptional planning and logistics were evident when he landed 158,000 troops in Korea at Busan, catching the Koreans off guard and quickly capturing cities like Pyongyang and Seoul. The Koreans, led by King Shonjo, were taken by surprise and fled north, and the Japanese advantage in firearms played a crucial role. However, the tide turned with the efforts of the Korean Navy under Admiral Yi Sun-sin, who used innovative turtle ships armed with cannons. Combined with a large Ming Chinese army and local Korean resistance, the Japanese supply lines were cut, stalling their advance by 1583. Despite holding southern Korea, Hideyoshi's forces couldn't push further. After failed peace negotiations, Hideyoshi launched a second invasion in 1597, which proved far less successful. When Hideyoshi died in 1598, the Japanese withdrew from Korea. This massive conflict devastated Korea, Japan, and China, leading to significant loss of life, destruction of agriculture, and cultural sites. It also soured Japan-Korea relations and strained the Ming dynasty, contributing to its decline. Following Hideyoshi's death on September 18, 1598, he had arranged for 5 senior ministers, known as Tairo, to act as regents for his young son. However, these ministers soon began to vie for power. Among them was Tokugawa Ieyasu of the Matsudaira family, who had unsuccessfully challenged Hideyoshi back in 1584. In 1600, Ieyasu emerged victorious at the Battle of Sekigahara against the generals supporting Hideyoshi's son. By 1603, Ieyasu took the title of shogun and established the Tokugawa shogunate, finally unifying Japan and ushering in 250 years of peace. As the old saying goes, Nobunaga mixed the cake, Hideyoshi baked it, and Ieyasu ate it. This new era of Japanese history, known as the Edo period, began when the capital was moved to Edo, now known as Tokyo.